And there we go. Good morning, everybody. So good to see you all. Before we get started, I would love to hear if anybody's had any experiences with shame. Has everybody, okay, type one in the chat down below in the bottom center. It looks like a speech bubble. Number one, has anybody noticed their shame? So do you remember day one was S, see your shame? Has anyone like recognized how it felt for them or noticed it showing up in their parenting or in any other relationship or area of their life? Type a one in the chat if you feel like you've just been a little bit more aware. Type a two in the chat if this is your first day and you're like, I don't know what the S stands for the unshame method. Okay. One. Awesome. Anyone else? I definitely have. I have to tell you, it's like this initiation of like, I'm going to go in front of all these people and I'm going to talk about shame. And then yesterday was like the biggest shame day I've had in a long time. Like I was just in a shame spiral swirl. And I honestly couldn't even pinpoint what it was for a long time. I could just feel it. And I knew, okay, I know what to do when I'm feeling this in my body. And so I did some things. We're going to do some things together today. Okay, Erin, you're new too. Okay, Erin, tell us where you're tuning in from. Thanks for popping in, one and two. Okay, tell us where you're tuning in from, Steph. And yes, I thumbs up sometimes come on my screen because I talk too much with my hands. So that will happen today. Okay, Arizona, awesome. Good to see you. Okay. So, shame. So I will quickly go over Virginia. Awesome. Um, I will quickly go over what the method is because it's the Unshame method, SHAME. Every day we've been learning a new thing. There is audio and video replays. The audio replays came in the form of like a private podcast feed. It'll say something like copy and paste this RSS feed and then open your podcast app and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, there's a couple steps. They came to your email. If you didn't get them, then you can just check your junk mail and you can also email. I'm going to give you my husband's email because he will figure this out for you because he's my tech guy, jd@thecoachsupport.com. If you're like, I really want to listen to these again and I don't know where, that's where. The video replays are going to expire at the end of Sunday night. So if you're really loving these and you're like, I want to review a couple of the things that we've done, people really loved Monday day. I really loved Tuesday day. I think every day has been good, but make sure that you go and listen to those replays before Sunday night. If I can figure it out, I'm actually going to try to put it on my actual podcast. If you don't know, I have a podcast called the Parenting Coach Podcast. I'm at like 177 episodes or something like that. It's wild. It's been going on for years. So if you hop over there, I'm going to try and get the audio replay on there. I don't know if that will work though. So make sure that you re-listen or catch up on the days that you want to if you haven't. Okay, Eliza, I caught myself saying in front of my kids, dang it, I'm shame parenting. Oh, that is so awesome. I love it. This morning, my kid was like, what are you going to do? I'm like, oh, I'm just going to talk to a bunch of my friends about shame, my favorite topic. He was like, oh, cool. Makes sense. Yeah, that's what I do. Talk about shame. Actually, speaking of which, we were talking about like the difference in parenting methods and stuff. And like, what do you do? Do you just parent differently now? Yes, we do. But also, I've sat down with my kids at least three times, I remember, maybe more in their life, where I sat down and was like, I was actually completely wrong about this thing that we've been doing for like 10 years. And I've reassessed it and I've thought a lot about it. And I actually don't think that's the right way at all. And I'm going to do something entirely different now. And we've done this a few times, and sometimes it's pretty uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable conversation to have, but it's more uncomfortable to then put it out there and be like, just so you know, I'm going to be intentionally trying to do something different now. I'm going to mess up a lot. I'm probably going to go back to my old ways a lot because it's like this new thing, but I just want you to know that this is what I'm going to do. And I've done that. I've done that at least three or four times. I can remember like being like, no, this is how it's going to go, especially when it's something uncomfortable. So one thing that we've really worked to unshame is sex education. So I don't know if you grew up in a home like mine, put a one in the chat if you did, where your parents didn't really talk a lot about sex. It wasn't really even anatomy, sexual education. It wasn't something that was really like something that you just have casual conversations about. Put a one in the chat if that was you. So as I'm doing all this shame work, I'm like, oh, there's still a lot over here. So I start doing all of this stuff within my own self. And then I'm like, I really want to do it differently with my kids, but also this is like the most uncomfortable thing. How do I go to them and be like, by the way, I have not taught it in this open and healthy and whatever way that I want to. I'm going to be doing it differently now. And now we're going to have a bunch of really awkward conversations all the time. Anyways, it's been fabulous. One. Yes, all of you, right? All of that's been really, really common theme that I've seen in a lot of people's homes. So anyways, that was one of the conversations I remember over the last few years that I was like, by the way, we're going to be doing this differently. Okay. So, I want to know, first of all, one, if you've had an experience with S. So for those of you that are new, S was see the shame. So what we did, and you can do this real quick right now on your own, you close your eyes, you tap into your body, you notice a time when you go back to a time where you felt a really strong emotional activation in your body, where you kind of knew that shame was under the surface. Shame being not good enoughism, I'm not a good mom. There's something underneath this that's like, that feels yuckier than just like, I'm frustrated. And then we noticed how that felt in our body. So people used words like it felt like hot or it felt heavy. It kind of felt like vomit or something. Someone said it felt kind of like lava. They felt it in their stomach or they felt it up into their throat. And tuning into what that physically feels in the body helped them to then be aware for the rest of that day. When am I feeling shame and how does it show up for me? We also talked about how it just shows up, how like we can notice that we're kind of sliding back into these patterns of how our parents parented us in shame-based ways, even just in our tone, even in our body language, even in our posture. We don't even have to say anything. It just comes through us. And why that is because of our childhood. So S was see the shame, just noticing either through my behaviors, my actions, or through a feeling in my body that shame is present. H is hone in. So if anyone's had an experience with the hone in, I want you to type a 1 in the chat. And or you can explain to us what you feel like it was. Hone in was, how do I really want to parent? We got super clear on what would parenting look like. And we used beautiful language like connection, like compassion, like empathy. The definition that I really loved from a couple of people, one was that my children will be seen, they'll be heard, they'll be known, they'll be understood, they'll feel that way around me. Someone else said safety. Someone else said that I'll teach them what I want. Someone else said that I can be me and that they can be them and that that can be okay. So we had some really great descriptions of H, hone in, what it is that I want from my parenting. And you can do that also quick on the call if you're one of the number twoers that hasn't been here. So type a 1 in the chat if you've had experiences with that. If you've had experiences with either S, see the shame, noticing it in your body, noticing yourself respond, or the H, 1, awesome, 1. Or the H of honing in to being like, oh, this is how I want to parent. This is what it is for me. And one thing that I've mentioned a few times is we don't need as much knowledge. We don't need to read more books. We don't need to take more courses on like what to do because all we need to do is shift this subconscious shame stuff in our bodies and we actually already know how to parent. Right? Not once did I say, now we're going to sit down and have a parenting lesson and I'm going to tell you all about connection and attachment and how it relates to our relationships and how we want to change things and why it's healthy. And here's some research supporting attachment-based parenting. I could have done all of that. I have done all of that in courses in the past. But that knowledge isn't going to be that helpful for you because you already knew how you wanted to parent, right? All of the words, all of the descriptions that you gave me were all the things you would have read anyways. Because intuitively, I strongly believe in intuition, especially when it comes to parenting, especially for moms. When we can tap into our intuition, that we know how we want to show up. It's just a matter of, I'm over here and I want to parent over here. And how do I get there? And remember, we talked about that wall, the wall that's blocking us of shame, with all the bricks in the wall of how we were parented, and not just parented, but we got this in community. We got this at church. We got this at all the activities we would go to. We got this at school for sure. There was so much shame being the driving factor to try to get you to stop whatever behavior it is that they wanted you to stop, which is interesting because it's usually like, so you can stop that so I can tolerate this emotion that's in my body so that I can then show up in the way that I want, right? I will be a better teacher. I will be a better parent. I will be a better community member if you could just yell a little less loudly. If you could just tone it down, then I'll be able to respond in the way that I want to. Okay, so that was the S and that was the H. Has anybody had any experiences with the A? The A was awareness. And we talked about awareness being twofold, the conscious awareness and the unconscious awareness. Have you had any experience with either of those? So the conscious awareness was my thoughts, noticing my thoughts, especially when things are tough. So one of the examples that I used was this lady that was trying to put her daughter to bed and she said, nighttime's always really tough. Who has a hard time with nighttime, by the way? Type a 1 in the chat if you're like, yes, nighttime is hard. So she was like, yep, bedtime's tricky. We have a really hard time at bedtime. And she felt like she was constantly draining and draining and draining and draining. And eventually she would lose her cool, respond in ways that she didn't want to, because she felt like it was so draining. And what we uncovered for her was all of the thoughts spinning underneath her head were just like, I can't handle this, or I shouldn't be doing this for so long, or like there was so much thinking that was actually blocking her from being able to connect with her kids. 111. Everybody relates to the like, yes, bedtime is a struggle. Me too. Me too. Okay, so it wasn't actually bedtime, and it's not actually her kids. those issues that seem like they're the issues really aren't the issues. It was what was going on under the surface. So has anybody, type a one in the chat if you've had an experience with awareness around your thoughts. We explained this thought dump idea, and the thought dump idea is you write down stream of consciousness, everything that's coming to mind out on paper, just to recognize what are my thoughts. You can do a focused thought dump where you write down your child's name, where you write down your name, where you write down parenting, where you write down your partner's name, and you write down all of the thoughts that come to mind just to notice how that's driving the show. Because what we talked about was think, feel, do. My thoughts create my feelings fuel my actions. And so if we're not aware, if we're not conscious of what's happening in the thought state, then we're just going to be constantly driving on autopilot and not knowing why we're behaving the way that we are. Okay, so one in the chat if you had any awareness around that. The other thing we talked about having awareness around was our feelings. And that's more of the unconscious. It's a little bit below the surface. One, awesome. The below the surface awareness is, how am I feeling in my body? How does shame feel for me? What is my energy right now? Because we might not necessarily have a conscious recollection of our shame. We might not notice that shame is driving it, that we're having shame-based thoughts about ourselves in that moment. But sometimes we can notice that feeling, right? We can note it, we can tap into that. Okay, we got some ones in there. Awesome. Okay, so does anybody want to share any experiences? You can type that in the chat, any experiences that you've had with the S or the H or the A, or how parenting has shifted this week. I loved Eliza's of like, I actually called myself out in front of my kids and was like, I'm parenting in a shame-based way right now. That can be uncomfortable to do, to be like, by the way, this is happening for me. And obviously we're not doing this on purpose, right? And this program is not to add to our shame. This is to recognize what is happening subconsciously underneath the surface without us even wanting that to happen so that we can gain enough awareness to actually make the shifts. And I loved the one example, day one, and I don't remember who it was, if it was somebody that's on the call today, how she said that after day one, all she did was recognize shame in her body and how it felt. And day two, she came onto the call and she said, because she was being aware of how she was feeling in her body, her whole day was so much more calm and she felt calm all day. And the after school time was unusually peaceful. Isn't that interesting? That's the only little bit of homework that I gave. The only thing was just recognizing, how does this feel in my body? Not the thoughts, not what's going on behind it, not where it came from, none of those things. And it already started to help. Okay, so does anybody have anything they want to share? Type that in the chat if you do. Okay, so today we're going to move on. The first 3 days were deconstruction. The first 3 days were like, how is shame showing up? And let's see how we can pull it out. Let's see how we can pull it out by noticing it's there, by noticing the feelings, by switching things around. We did a meditation yesterday, which was great, around personalization and differentiation. So when I'm kind of attaching my child's behavior to my meanness, to my enoughness, and we separated that through a meditation. So you can go back and listen to that if you missed that as well. Okay, so I'm going to share some of these because they're so good. Yesterday, my second grader got his first ever bad report from school, and I started to go in a shame-based conversation with him, but noticed immediately and shifted. Good for you. The noticing that you're there is probably the hardest part. I instead started telling him about how I had the same experience when I was a kid, and he had a good cry and got his big feelings out, then was calm. The whole thing was very positive. Oh my goodness. That is the sweetest thing ever. And you know what? You didn't even have to read a parenting book to be like, you know what I'm supposed to do here? I'm supposed to show empathy. But that's empathy, what you just did. Telling him, I remember a time when when I was just like you, when this happened for me. That helps normalize the shame feelings that he's feeling. That helps us come alongside them. That helps them feel seen and feel heard and feel understood and feel safe and secure and supported in all of the things that the books would tell you to do, except that it would be more mechanical. This was so much more natural. And that helped him to get his big emotions out and neutralize the whole thing. That's amazing. Seriously. Eliza, I'm almost hyper aware now, but I don't really know how to respond differently. So I just continue on shaming because I don't know what else to do. Good question. Okay. Actually, this morning as I was meditating, I've been trying to meditate every morning before this call, longer than I usually do because I usually do it for like 60 seconds. And just kind of like release all the things. And then I'm like, okay, what do people need most today? And I was going to move on to this, like we've deconstructed all the shame stuff. So now let's move on to something else. I talked a few times about the shame-free parenting movement, and I'll talk about that again throughout the call. But that is the work that we're going to do there, is like actually like how do I do that now? That is what that's going to be about. This week is more about how do I recognize that it's even happening and start to make those shifts, and how do I figure out how I want to parent in a different way. Okay. I mean, I know what to do in the moment, but I can't think how else to handle it. It's instinct to shame. Yeah, yeah. Because it's subconscious, because the work that we do is subconscious. So as I was meditating, I was like, you know what people could really use? They could really use a shift right now on their shame. Now that everybody's like, okay, yeah, shame is here. Now what, Crystal? Until we move into all of the beautiful, like, let's create something beautiful with our parenting. Let's shift some shame today. Okay, cool. Everybody in on this? It's going to be subconscious work. Type a one in the chat if you're like, yes, that sounds awesome. Let's shift some of our shame. Um, Okay, I'm gonna read this. I've watched the first part of the replay and then was reamed out in the school parking lot yesterday morning by another parent who used shame. Oh, they always do when they're reaming us out. It was humiliating and I felt it all day and dreamed about it through the night. That's when you know it's really soaked in, when your subconscious is still trying to process it at night while you're sleeping. She used the phrase, "You're the only one who," it made me realize I have used the phrase with my kids. It was a great kick in the butt and helped me really consider the way I speak to my kids. Their school is very shame based, which I didn't realize at the beginning. So I'm tackling it within myself and trying to advocate for my kids at school. Shame is everywhere. Okay, one thing I'm going to mention to you. I talked about this the other day, and this wasn't like a teaching thing, it just came up in our conversation. But shame shows up in three ways. One is people pleasing, right? Saying yes to everybody else when it's a no inside of me, making everybody else comfortable when I'm really uncomfortable, taking the discomfort inside. Number two, shutting down and withdrawing, either emotionally or physically, moving away from that. Number three, which is most common for me, this is my flavor of shame most of the time, is defensiveness and blame. Shame and blame are two sides of the same coin. So as soon as I'm blaming, as soon as I'm defensive, as soon as I'm telling someone that they're the only one who I have felt shame. And shame is like garbage. I grab it and I throw it at everybody else around me. And then they take it and they throw it at everybody else around them through their behavior, through their tone, through their mannerisms. And so one thing that I like to note when someone else is doing their whole thing at me, and what immediately takes the humiliation out of it is, oh, they are feeling shame. The only reason she is reaming you out in the parking lot is that there is some amount of shame within her in this moment. This has completely changed things with my husband, by the way, because I'm like, oh, wait, this isn't about me. Like, this is some way of him internally processing something. I don't know what it is, and I don't even have to know what it is, but it immediately neutralizes it for me. I'm like, this isn't me. And also, it's almost like they throw their garbage at me and I dropped the garbage, right? I intentionally in that moment was like, wait a second, you're feeling shame about something here. Okay. Okay. One, I've definitely been calmer this week, but I find myself still bribing my child and I don't want to do that, but not sure what to say instead. Yeah. So our typical modalities in parenting are, so our parents often parented in a way that was very authoritarian. So this was bribes, threats, coercion, shame, punishment, stuff like that. Go to your room, or here you can have more YouTube time if you do this thing, whatever. On the other end of that spectrum, we have permissiveness. Permissiveness is, I guess I just let my kids do whatever. I guess compassion means everybody gets to do whatever they want all the time, and I just sit here and watch them. And I'm more of their friend, and there's no guidance. Both sides of those spectrum, which our brain will tell us there's only two ways to parent, and we yo-yo back between them, or our partner parents in one way, and then feel like we have to like parent in the other way so that we can make up for the way that they're parenting. Um, if you feel me on that one. Anyway, so both of those, yo-yo parenting, going back and forth, those are not the two only ways to parent. But our brain tells us that those are the only two ways, and we ping pong back and forth, but they both have the exact same problem at the core. Low safety, low security. I'm not feeling held. I'm not feeling cared for. I'm not feeling understood. I'm not feeling taken care of. Compassion is fierce. Compassion has boundaries. Compassion is not over boundaried. It's not like all these shields all over the place. It's not all this shame stuff. But in the center, compassion, empathy, connection, that's how we parent. There's also boundaries. That all actually comes a lot more naturally when we can process through whatever the shame is happening in our brain. Okay. You're welcome. Yes, right? Yes. Okay. So that's how parenting, that's usually how I used to explain it to people. When I would do the like, here's a course where I'm going to teach you about parenting, we would talk all about that. But actually, I'm going to show you. Oh, okay. Should I show it now? Yeah, I'm going to show you a clip right now. So does everybody know that I have a podcast? Type in one in the chat if you're like, yes, I already know. I listened to your podcast. Maybe you've already listened to this part. I don't know. We're going to listen. Okay, some of you. So it's called the Parenting Coach Podcast with Crystal. This is a clip I found yesterday. And this is a clip. Okay, so I used to teach this program called Parent School. It was great. It really was a lovely program, and people got great results from it. But when I noticed over and over and over again, is that shame is like the most thing that we need to work on. It's really like as we work on that, everything else comes naturally. And so I wanted to share this little clip. This is from my client. Her name is Camille, and I interviewed her on my podcast. And you can go listen to that episode if you want. It's season 5, episode 25. And here's what she said.
Yeah, it's a good thing though. Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's been such a blessing because by doing the shame work, I don't have nearly as many triggers,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially from my kids. And that has made it so that we can have that connection. And um, I mean, I know it's cliche, but it really has been like a dream. And
Okay. Did everybody hear that? Type in one in the chat. Was that audio working? Did everyone hear Camille? Okay. I'm glad the audio worked. Okay. I was listening to that and I was tearing up even just listening to our conversation again. We cried almost the whole conversation together. Um, it was beautiful because she was like, the shame work was the thing. I used to teach 6 modules. One module was shame work. And that's what would come up in all of our coaching calls. That's what I ended up coaching on all the time. And over time, this was a few years ago that I interviewed her. Over time, I thought shame is the only work. That as we are able to break down that wall of what's happening with shame, we're able to naturally move to the other side and parent in a way that's much less shame based. And also, when we notice it, we can like turn it around and we can use it as a learning opportunity for ourselves or for our kids. Okay, so all of you are like, yes, I'm on board. Can we like move some of our shame? We're going to move some of our shame real quick today, and then we're going to move into some less of the deconstruction and more of the reconstruction. What do I want to actually build in my parenting? And it's a really, really good, going to be good. So we're going to do the subconscious work pretty quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes. We're going to breathe. This is going to be very, if you've never done a meditation before, number one practice is don't feel like you're doing it wrong. There is no doing it wrong. Whatever is meant to be is meant to be. And so let it just flow. Number two is this is going to be a little bit woo woo in that it's not going to make very much sense consciously, and it doesn't have to make sense consciously. So when I ask you things like, what shape does it feel like? Or use a metaphor, the metaphor might be like, I've had one where it was like, it feels like an empty cave inside myself. It feels like a black hole inside of me. It feels like a concrete block. Or when I move to moving the emotion in our body, it's going to be things like a hammer smashing it or me drinking water that like pours everywhere. So use imagery that doesn't make sense. That's how this works. It is harder to move our shame in a more conscious way. It's much easier to move it in a more subconscious way because shame gets stuck in our body. Okay, everyone ready? All right, so close your eyes. The breath that we're going to start with is in through the nose, exhaling twice as long out through the mouth. Just go at your own pace with that. You can kind of shake your body on the exhale if you want, or roll your shoulders. Okay, as we settle into our body, we're going to take one more breath. I want you to think of a time where you felt triggered. This is a strong emotional activation in your body. Think about some parenting moment. It can be recent. It can be in the past where you felt a lot of big emotion. I want you to go to that moment in time. I want you to recall that memory, bring it up into your mind. Where are you? What room are you in? What does it look like? Who else is there with you? As you watch this memory, bring the energy up into your body of that memory. And as you allow the memory to fade out over the top of your head, down the base of your neck, and float off your shoulders, keep with the energy, how it feels inside, the emotional activation that you feel and that you feel now. Turn it up a little bit if you can. Imagine there's a control switch in your chest and you're just turning it up little bit by little bit. Now that you have hold of that, I invite you to imagine, what does it look like? Think of a shape or an object or a metaphor How would I describe that? Is it like hands squeezing? Is it like a rectangle? What does it look like? And as you start to imagine what that looks like or feels like, watch the details of it. And if you're more of a feeling person than a visual person, watch the feelings of it. Describe the feelings of it to yourself. Watching those details like color or texture or shape, movement or stillness. Allowing more of it in. If more of it wants to come in, maybe noticing it build a little bit. As you watch it, maybe it moves, maybe it stays the same, builds or lessens. Just let it do its thing. Now we're going to ask it, what does it need in order to change? What does that shape or object or metaphor need in order to release, to feel safe? And in your mind, you're going to give it that. Whatever that thing is, we're going to give it as much of it as it needs. Watch yourself do that. If you already noticed a shift within your body, if you're feeling differently, stick with that new feeling. If you're not feeling that energetic shift yet, keep asking yourself, what else does it need? Is there something more that maybe it needs, something different? And give it that. As you do that, notice how you feel now. Notice how different it feels in your body than when you started. Again, lean into this new feeling, this new sensation. Imagining you turn up that control switch, you go inside your body and tick, 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 you turn it up. You spread the feeling even more. You spread it all the way up to the top of your head, all the way down to your feet, and you feel it spread through the ground, through your fingertips, throughout you, going from without in to without, spreading all the way around your body like a glowing sphere. Emotions are messages from our brain to our body and our body to our brain, and see if there is a message from this new feeling for you, words, or just a feeling or thought that comes. We're going to take our pointer finger and our thumb and we're going to press them together, taking a slow, deep breath in through the nose, exhaling twice as long out through the mouth. And then shaking the whole body. Whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes. Come back to. Okay. Type a 1 in the chat if you feel different. If you felt a shift in that, just that small little exercise. Who feels different? 1, 1. That is subconscious work. 1. If you weren't able to get into that because there was too much happening around you, 1, then I would invite you to go back and do that again, because that is how you shift it. It is subconscious. It is not conscious. I did not go and say, and in that moment, this is what was happening in your thoughts, and this is what you were thinking, and this is where it came from within your childhood. Like, none of that had to happen in order for you to have that shift, and that shift is subconscious, and it will keep going through the rest of your day. It will keep going through the next several days. In fact, I want to say that I think that this work is so much more about our energy and shifting our energy than anything else. I had a new client, a couple that I'm meeting with. They're from Oregon. I met with them yesterday and I've met with them for 3 weeks. They signed up about 5 weeks ago and I've met them for 3 weeks in a row. And every week they've said, things are going unusually good. Then the next week, things are going really well. Then this week, I feel like we're just on this weird parenting streak where everything is going good. The moment that it started going good for them was the moment that they decided to sign up. Even the 2 weeks between when they signed up and we had our first call, they already felt so much better and their parenting was going so much better. And last night I told them, I was like, maybe that's what was needed. Maybe it was this energetic shift that already happened within you to be like, yes, parenting matters. And yes, we're going to do this. And like, we're going to go ahead and like energetically we're there. And now they've had 5 weeks of like really amazing connections with their kids. So energy is important. Um, okay, if you are just coming on, because I know there's a couple of you just coming on, please, please, please go back and watch that replay or audio replay or whatever, because that is one of the exercises that we just went through to actually shift the shame in your body. And you will notice that shift and you will notice that feeling. And it is important. So go back and do that. Okay, questions, comments, a message that came through to you. I would love to hear those. If there was a message that came through or a feeling that you had afterwards, type those in the chat while I'm getting my screen to share. Screens. There we go. Okay. Anybody have a feeling they want to share? Something that changed for them? A message that came through to them? Okay. That was so eye-opening. It finally clicked on how my parents' indecisiveness modeled that for me and how I show up in anger when I really feel indecisive and shame. The thought came up for me that was the Wizard of Oz hiding behind a mask. Oh, so interesting. Right? I used to feel so much indecisiveness and so much shame around my indecisiveness also. Yeah. It's so interesting how it comes. And shame is always really unique. It always tells us something that feels very true to us, very unique and very specific to us. And also, another message that shame gives us is that we're the only one and that we uniquely are messed up in a way that like other people aren't messed up, which is why it sometimes feels hard to pay for support or to even say, I need help or go to a counselor or therapist or a coach. Because sometimes I've talked to people who are like, no, I've tried everything. It won't work for me. And that's how I know, like, oh, their shame brain is real strong right now because it's telling them that they are so messed up that this won't work for them. That is what shame tells us. And it tells me that too. It tells all of us that. The word acceptance came up. And at first it seemed like others' acceptance would feel good. And then I realized it would be my own acceptance of the shame. Yeah. You know what I did yesterday when I said I was like feeling a lot of shame yesterday? And I was just like, man, and it was like specifically in the way that I was teaching you guys. We were talking about differentiation and personalization, and I was taking something in my life and completely personalizing, not parenting, but I just noticed it and I could feel it. And I was getting in this shame spiral. And I immediately was like, oh, this is shame. And how surprising and interesting, how serendipitous that I just taught this. And now I'm feeling it intensely in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. And all I did was decide to accept it. I just decided today is the day where I'm going to feel this. I'm just going to feel heavier today. I'm just going to let it all be there. And I just let it be. Okay. So 5 days to shame-free parenting. We already reviewed the S and the H and the A. Does anybody have any questions about those? See the shame, hone in on what kind of parenting you want, awareness in your thought and your feeling and your conscious and your unconscious. And also if anyone has any experiences with the homework for any of those days that you've been doing or anything you've noticed, any shifts that you've noticed. And remember that parenting is an inside job. It's so much more about what's happening to us. And that when we move to shame-free parenting, it's not these ridiculously impossible high standards, right? I just told you I felt shame most of the day yesterday. So our goal isn't to be like, and now I'm never going to feel shame. And now I'm never going to yell at my kids. And now I'm never going to blah, 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 blah. I don't actually yell anymore because of the shame work that I've done, which is a random side note. I haven't yelled in 4 years, and not because I've tried not to yell, even though I tried lots of things to make me not yell that didn't work before. But as I've been intentionally honing in on my shame over the years, that just stopped because I didn't feel like Camille's story that I just shared that clip of. I just didn't feel as intensely triggered. It didn't bubble up for me anymore. Nothing felt as in the same way that it did before. Okay. So the first 3 days were deconstruction of all of the shame. How's it showing up for us? Where is it coming? All of the things. Questions about any of that before we get into the reconstruction, what we want to build. Okay. How are we feeling about shame? Number one, if you feel like you're feeling better, you're already feeling more hopeful, you're already feeling more like you understand your shame, you're already feeling like things have started to shift within in you at a subconscious level, not just up here, like, yeah, I get it, but like, can you feel the movement? Can you feel the change so far? One in the chat if you're feeling that way. Awesome. One. Anyone else? One, Charlene. Great. And it's cool if you're just consciously there too. If you're just like, yeah, I'm understanding it, but I'm not totally feeling the shift yet. You can type a 2 in that in the chat also. Okay. So let's go through today. We talked a little bit. I feel like another one. Awesome, Elena. Okay. I feel like we already talked about this a little bit. But how shame gets in the way of the kind of parenting that we want to. Let's see if I want to mention anything else. Okay, so I'm going to share an example. This is a personal example, and this actually happens a lot, but the one time that I'm going to share is a time that I remember because I was really aware as being, I decided to intentionally bring awareness to the situation in the moment. So we go to Costco. My daughter's at Costco, and my daughter always wants everything. So it doesn't matter where we go. It's like, I want that candy. I want that toy. I want this thing. I've always wanted this, even though I just saw it for the first time ever. And it's the thing that I need the most in life to complete me. It's like every single time we go out. So we like try not to go to stores very much, but you have to go to Costco to grocery shopping. So there's these breakfast sausages that she wants. They are really good. They're organic, they're grass-fed, they're healthy, they taste really yummy. They weren't on sale, they're pretty pricey. And I'm like, you know what? We're gonna get them next time. We'll wait. They go on sale all the time. We'll stock up when they're on sale. And she's like, no, I want those breakfast sausages right now. And I'm like, no, sorry, dude, we're not getting them today, right? I'm in a rush trying to leave Costco, right? Like, not really like getting down on her level or talking to her about it or whatever, just kind of moving on. She just has like an epic meltdown, like running away from me throughout the store, eventually like laying down on the ground, like kicking and screaming. So, all I noticed in that moment was my shame brain. And my shame brain was so specific and unique to me. It was like, you were doing a terrible job. Her behavior is because of you. Look at all of these people that are staring at you. There was actually people staring. There was a lot of people staring. They're all thinking this and this about you. What if they recognize you from Instagram? What if they listen to your parenting coach podcast and now they're like, wait, she has kids that scream and yell at Costco. She's not a good parenting coach. Like, all the most specific shame brain possible. And I didn't do anything except just feel it. I just noticed all of, like, it was like a huge amount of like thoughts and feelings and all the things. And I was just like, and I just watched it. And I just picked her up and she was yelling and screaming and hitting me. And I just like walked out of Costco and my husband got our groceries and we sat in the car and we were there for like an hour um, before we could actually drive away because she wouldn't let us put her seatbelt on. And in that moment, I didn't freak out because all I did was awareness of like, whoa, there's a lot happening within me. But at that time, this was a few years ago, I didn't really know how to move through my shame. So I wasn't able to like get to compassion for her because I didn't really know how to get to compassion for me. And we always have to get to compassion for us before we can get to compassion for others. You should write that one down because remember that. This is very important. We have to get to our own self-compassion. That is the antidote to shame before we can get to compassion to others. So I wasn't able to shift it. And so we were there for like an hour. I wasn't able to help her regulate her feelings in the way that she needed it because it just took so long. So I'm going to give you, so that was my like, not bad example. It wasn't a bad example. I remember I gained awareness, like for sure it was helpful for me. But I didn't necessarily parent with compassion or help her self-regulate. I'm going to tell you another good example that is from not me, from my client who just sent me this one. So she has a neurodiverse kiddo also. I do as well. Her has high functioning autism. He's been diagnosed over the years that we've been working together. And he started freaking out really big time. So they're out on vacation. She's not here watching this. She's going to watch the replay because they're on vacation all week long. And she was like, he went into one of his like huge, like if you've ever had a neurodiverse kid meltdown, they're like, it's more than a toddler tantrum. Plus they're like bigger and older and it can get really insane. So he's like doing his thing and she's just like, oh my gosh, we're not even at home. And what do we do? And we're in this like other person's place. And anyways, and she was able to get to that compassion piece and to see like, oh, he's responding this way because we're not at home, we're not in his regular environment. Like this is just really hard for him. And all she did was just like come alongside him. She was able to feel calm. She was able to feel compassion. She was able to feel connected. And this is the message that she sent me. She said, I couldn't believe how quickly he moved through his emotions. It was like so fast. As soon as she was able to keep that connection portal open, it helped him just move through it. And I shared that example because I was still sitting in my shame with my daughter at Costco. And so it took a real long time. I wasn't able to help her with her emotions. I wasn't even able to help me with my emotions. Like it was just a hard time. And I didn't respond in a way that I feel really terrible about or anything, but I also did not use connection and love and self regulation and all of that. Versus this, where she was able to understand, okay, this is what's happening for him. She was able to feel compassion for herself, for him, for all the things, and she was able to help him move through it. So that's what our goal is. Shame gets in the way of that, but that's our goal. Okay. So we're going to go a step even beyond like, how do we want to parent? And I want you to imagine if your child was leaving tomorrow, they were leaving your house tomorrow, and they had instilled all of the values that you wanted. Values to me are just like what matters to me. So my son did just leave the house. He did just move out a couple of weeks ago. And so I've thought about this a lot. Like, what do I want to have like known? Like, I feel really good about this. Like he's understood this, or he's gained this value. He is this way. What would those be for you? I'd love for you to write those down either on a piece of paper or just in the chat. And I would love for us to share some of that in the chat. So what if they were leaving the next day? Let's share some of those. Once you've written some of those down, let's share some of them. So write some of those in the chat. What do you feel you'd want them to most know or be or do? I'll also share when I was showing you that clip, that audio clip of my client Camille, and I was listening to her episode yesterday. And she said that she always knew what she wanted her family to be like. She always knew how she wanted to parent. And she just kind of thought it would happen naturally. So after years and years and years and years of feeling like, wait, this is not coming naturally, that's when she finally decided to reach out for support. She actually found me through the podcast app. She just typed in parenting help or something, found me, listened to my podcast, and joined parent school at that time. And I think that we often feel that way, like that it'll just somehow happen naturally. Like if we know what we want, that it'll just like, it will just come to be, that we won't necessarily have to work so hard at it. Okay, live life with integrity, develop personal integrity. Yeah. And I'll also say my favorite quick definition of integrity is like, I'm the same me no matter what arena I'm in, right? I'm me here. I'm me when I go out to work. I'm me at home. And that's what integrity is, right? It's like, it's that living within truth within yourself, that they are loved and enough, that they can call me anytime to stand up for themselves and to be kind and helpful. Whew, that call me every time. My son must have figured that one out because he does call me all the time. He's like, I missed this thing, my schedule, this, I need your help with this. All the time. Okay. I'll add some of my own while you're thinking, and I'd love to hear more shares as well. Empathy, being able to fit with others in empathy, compassion, self-regulation, knowing what to do when they are feeling heavy emotions, shame resiliency, knowing how to move through their shame and move on from it, knowing that they're amazing. That's probably the thing I want them to know the most is that like they are amazing and they are loved and they are whole and they are enough just as they are. Because when they believe that about themselves, then everything else falls into place. Like my son could be in college feeling very behind and feeling very left out and feeling like he doesn't know what he's doing because he's been homeschooled for 11 years. This is his first school type experience. There's a lot of things that he's like, Mom, we never learned inverse numbers. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. We didn't do inverse numbers. Like there's so many things that have been popping up that he's like, wait, I don't know this part. And I'm like, yep, we never went over that part. And I think it is his belief in like his own beingness and his own enoughness that helps him instead of feeling behind, feel like, oh, I got this, like I can figure this out. Ability to see what's beneath the surface, to be a person of depth, ability to form deep connections. Beautiful. These are beautiful. One thing I want to mention here is getting clear in what really matters to you. And I think these are really beautiful ones. But like, if I was just like, I really want my kid to be an NBA player, um, that's not that's not what we're talking about here, right? It's like what actually matters. Type a one in the chat. Has anybody heard my podcast episode from last week? It was the part 2 of breathing belief into your kids, manifestation and parenting. That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm just wondering if anybody has tried that yet, because we're going to be doing that together. So type in the one in the chat if you remember listening to that. Okay. There's a quote. Can't find where it is. I think it's from Michelle Obama. And she says something like, I don't want my children to ever feel like they have to fulfill some sort of brokenness within me. That like there's some brokenness within me, something that I wasn't able to fulfill that now they have to. So when I write down my values, I make sure like that I'm out of it. Like it doesn't have anything to do with me and making me feel enough about my parenting or me feel enough about my life or something that I wasn't ever able to accomplish. It's just for them. Okay. So for those of you that maybe didn't hear that story, I know, I'm sure some of you have. One, Kristen Lee, listen to it. Okay, so I'll share the quick story about my son, Ruben. He let me share this. He was in this little like leadership life coaching kind of program. And we're in the middle of a house remodel. So everybody was sleeping in the living room. He was gone on a trip, and I had to like move everyone's stuff to their rooms because their rooms were finally like mostly finished. So I'm moving all of his stuff, like shuffling all of these papers, and the paper on top said this. It said, it said negative beliefs about myself. And then the other side was positive affirmations. So it was like what I believe about myself that I don't want to believe anymore and what I choose to believe about myself. And he had 3 negative affirmations listed. And it was, I'm lazy, I'm unproductive, and I don't get enough done, something like that. And I read that and I immediately started to cry because I was like, oh, those are the things that I believe about him. Those are the things that I most bother him about, that I most nag him about. And I knew in that moment, it just came to me that like 3 years ago, these were not his beliefs about himself. He didn't believe that. He felt great about what he was doing in life. That I had breathed that belief unintentionally into him. And over the next several weeks, I started thinking a lot about this concept. Like, what beliefs am I breathing into my kids, both for positive and negative? Unintentionally, what's happening here? And I could have used that story to shame myself and be like, wow, I'm doing a terrible job. I should have not done that over the last few years. And like, look at where he is now. And like, this is all my fault. I didn't do that. In fact, I didn't even feel shame at all. I felt sadness. It was for sure an ouch moment, right? You know, those ouch parenting moments where you're like, oh, it was really sad for sure. But I also recognized the power that I had in that moment, the influence that I had in helping him and his beliefs about himself. Now, this is different than control. When control is high, influence is low. Control is, I need this from you. I want this from you. You have to be this way. High expectations, lots of boundaries, all the things, lots of rules. That's control. When we feel controlled, we don't want to do whatever that person wants us to do. Our influence is actually inversely connected to our control. So if control is high, influence is low. But also, as we are able to drop control of the people around us, of all the things happening in our life, we actually have much higher influence. Okay, I want to get to this message. Is it available on YouTube, TikTok, or anything else other than a podcast? YouTube Music is its own like podcast thing. So if you Google it, you can listen to it there and also on my website, which is coachcrystal.ca/blog. You'll get BLOG. You'll get to my podcast and you can listen to it right on my website. But it is on YouTube there too. YouTube Music. Okay. So This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to do this together, right? This, instead of just the breaking down of all the shame things, it's like, what do I want to create in my children if anything was possible? So I want you to think about a tree. There's these like roots of a tree, and then there's the branches of the tree. So the branches of the tree are everything you just wrote down. Those are the values that we see on the outside, right? They're empathetic, they're compassionate, they believe in themselves, like whatever those things are, like that's how we see it. We see them interact with people. We see that they're successful in whatever ways we feel success is. I've redefined success to be like, I'm healthy and strong within myself. I feel good about myself. It doesn't have anything to do with money. It doesn't have anything to do with followers. It doesn't have anything to do with friends or anything external. It's success for me is very internal. So we have what we see on the outside, and then we have the roots and we have the trunk. So this is the next 60 seconds. I want you to write down real quick what beliefs they would have to have about themselves in order to have that fruit, in order to have those branches. So whatever the branches are that you put, the values are that you wanted them to have, what would they have to believe about themselves in order for that to be true? Or if you know somebody that you feel like has these values, what do you think they believe about themselves? Okay, time's up. I want you to write down at least one in the chat. What is a belief that they would have to have about themselves in order for that value to be true? Because if you think about think, feel, do, if I think a certain way, I'm going to feel a certain way, and that fueling is going to show in my actions, right? So if my son is off at college and he's thinking like, I got this, I can figure this out. I'll be able to figure this out, or I'm supported. I love myself anyways, even if I don't get good grades, whatever I think his thought should be, then like his feeling is going to be like confident. Right. And so his actions are going to be, which his actions so far have been like going to get a tutor and like spending a lot of time on his homework and asking his professors a lot of questions and asking us for help and like um, picking a schedule that's going to work for him. Like all the actions make sense because it's aligned with his thought and his feeling. I don't know what his thought about himself is. I was just guessing. But what do you think the beliefs about? Yes, I will. Can I say what I said about control? As control is high, influence is low, and they're inversely correlated. So as you can drop control, your influence increases. So control being, I need you to be this way. I want you to be this way, having really high expectations of your kids. Expectations lead to frustration within us, by the way. Expectations are so much more about us than they are about other people. But as control is high, influence is low. People hate being controlled. We can energetically feel it when someone wants something from us, when they want us to show up a certain way, when they're trying to control us, we can feel it and we hate it. It's called counter will. We immediately put up this wall and we're like, no, I do not want to feel that way. So as control is high, influence is low. When we can completely drop control, influence is high. Think about the example I gave you of my client, Marianne, yesterday, how when she was sitting with her kid, she was just like able to help him move through his emotions more quickly because she didn't think, oh, I need him to move through his emotions really fast. I need him to not feel this way. I need him to stop being this way, right? She had no control there, and her influence was actually much higher. Okay, beliefs. Write down one belief or more that you think your child would have if the fruit of that tree, if the branches of that tree were whatever you said your values would be. I make good decisions. Yeah, I make great decisions. And also, I would add, like, I love myself even when I don't. I learn from the times when I don't. Um, One of my kids was going on a camp this summer, and I knew that they were going to be doing a lot of this kind of work because that's the kind of thing program that it was. And so I asked him to set an intention for himself. I said, like, what kind of an intention do you want to have for this week? What when you come back, like, what do you want to feel? And we talked a lot about beliefs about the self. I want to believe this about myself. And by the end of the week, because he had that intention, he came home and he was like, Mom, I didn't even think about it. And at the end of the week, I actually believed all the beliefs that I had about myself. It's pretty cool. So we can actually do this externally with our kids, not as much when they're little, at least in as overt ways. I'm enough exactly as I am. I'm worthy of choosing to be around others that treat me well. Yeah. It's safe to be me, and I know how to be around other safe people also. Um, okay. So tomorrow, what we're going to dig into. So today is the M. That's manifestation. It's how am I going to believe this, even if there's not evidence of it now? But tomorrow, we're going to dig into how can we really believe these beliefs for our kids and breathe them into our kids. Um, okay. So over time, we're able to breathe beliefs into our kids, right? If I believed when my kids were little, they'd never slept through the night ever. And there was no evidence that they were ever going to sleep through the night because they'd wake up like 15 times a night. But there was some belief at an underlying level that like one day they'll figure this out. Like it was frustrating in the moment for sure. But I also didn't think like, oh, when they're 18, they're not going to know how to fall asleep. Like I just knew that they were going to get it. And having that vision in mind helped me to relax and to release and to lose that control piece of it and just like be more trusting of it. And then it did happen, right? They learned how to regulate their emotions. They learned how to sleep through the night. Like there's lots of things that I have been able to believe for my kids before I had any evidence that it was possible. I also dropped the pressure in myself to control them. I dropped the pressure of the timeline for it to happen. The trust and the calm helped me see that there were things that were going really well that my brain hadn't noticed more. And also, as I've been doing all of this work, one side note that I've noticed is that my kids just get along really well with each other. Like everybody just gets along really well, and there's a lot less fighting, which has been fascinating to me because that isn't something, again, that I worked on. I didn't work on stopping yelling. I didn't work on getting my kids to stop fighting. And those things have just happened more naturally on their own. Okay, so M is manifestation. This is the work for today. What do I want to call in? What beliefs do I want to practice? So write those down. If I could influence my children in this way, if I could actually help them to believe beliefs about themselves that will serve them, what are those beliefs that I want to have? You can add to this list all through the evening as you keep thinking about it. What actually matters most? Remembering to separate me and my enoughness from what I want from them. But if anything was possible for them, what would I want them to believe about themselves? Okay, this was Michelle Obama's quote. I just found it. I never felt it was my job to create some version of mini me's who are going to live out some brokenness in me. So I'm going to get out myself and my brokenness and my not enoughness in me and like my kids. What do I actually want from them? And what beliefs would I have to have about them? Like, how can I breathe that into them? So that's the homework for today. If you have any questions about that, you can write that in the chat. I'm also going to share, for those of you that might have missed this, parenting is an inside job. When I shared that little clip from my client, Camille, one of the things that she said there was she listened to my podcast and she thought that story could be mine too. And then her reactions changed. She said, I had this vision that I thought was going to come naturally, deep connected relationships, and it wasn't. And doing this shame work has been transformational for her. I shared this on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and today because it's so good. If you put shame in a petri dish, it needs three things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount of shame in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, it can't survive. So I have decided that the thing that we need to work on the most is shame, and that I want to start this petri dish. I want to start this movement of shame being the thing that we need to call out, that we need to speak about, that we need to process through in conscious and subconscious ways. So you can join the shame-free parenting movement, AKA the best petri dish ever, if you want to continue this work and see like 10 times more results. Like you've already seen it now, it will keep continuing. And your own experiences here just go to show that it already has worked. Right? Someone said, I took these from the comments in the last couple of days. Awareness around how shame feels helped me to stay calm through the day and had an unusually peaceful after school time. I had some beautiful connections that night before bed. What else has happened for you already as you've intentionally brought not shame and secrecy and silence to this? The details of this program are 8 group coaching calls. This is the petri dish to have somebody else hear you, reflect back to you, mirror to you, be there with you as you go through this. Also, there's subconscious reprogramming calls where all we're going to do is that subconscious stuff. We will do something subconscious on every single call for sure because shame needs that. but there's going to be some really intentional ones where we're going to do things like hypnotherapy or somatic breath work, something to really shift things in deep ways. This is the below the surface work. There'll also be community where you can ask questions, where you can come together and be like, yes, this is how I'm feeling. Also, there will be 3 dad calls so that you can get on board with your partner as well, have them come to the call and understand what it is that we're talking about here. You get this all for $9.97, which is the lowest price I've ever done something like this before for so much in here. This is much less than what my regular private sessions would be. And we're going to start next Monday, and we're going to base the time and day on who comes to the call, the time zones of people, so that it will work for everyone. If you're worried about opening up, you can also add on some one-on-one coaching sessions. If you feel like you want something even more, like really, really intense and also individual and a lot of hand holding, I'm there for that as well. And that will happen through a group Voxer community, which is like a walkie-talkie app. Monday to Friday, I'll be there answering your questions, coaching you through everything. And I believe so much that the shame work will work that I'm actually going to give a 7-day money back guarantee. I've never had a guarantee on any of my things because I just like didn't want to have to deal with that. But I feel so strongly that this work needs community, that this work needs to be spoken out and done, that this work will work for you, that there is going to be the 7-day money back guarantee. And if you're like, no, I don't want to work on my shame yet, or no, I want to do something else, that is fine also. So join the Shame-Free Parenting movement. Starts October 7th. That is all I have for you today. I have to hop off and do a podcast recording now, but you can find it at coachcrystal.ca/group, and I will answer all of your questions. And come back tomorrow for E. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be such a great end to the week. And thanks for being here, everybody. We will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Bye, everyone.